Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Corsair K40 gaming keyboard. This is kind of their budget model. It's about $80 as you see it. It's made out of plastic and not metal like their more expensive designs are. And this one also has a membrane keyboard versus a mechanical switch keyboard. So it feels a little bit different. The keys maybe take a little bit more effort to push down, but it does really feel like a Corsair keyboard top to bottom. It's a lot lighter because it is made out of plastic, but the keys are about the same size. They're the same height off the desk. It really feels very much like a Corsair keyboard as you're typing and playing games on it. It is backlit. I'll show you what that backlight looks like in a minute. You cannot do per key backlighting. You have to do the whole keyboard all at once, but you can assign a number of different colors to it, some of them on the fly also. There are macro keys set up here on the side, so you have 6 different macro positions and then 3 banks of settings, so you can have up to 18 different macros configured on the keyboard at any given time based on which row of settings you're in. So for example, if I have a macro programmed on G1 in my first setting here, I can then set a different setting to that same key in setting 2 here. So you do have a lot of flexibility for programming the keyboard. What's really nice is that it'll download everything into itself when you configure it with its Windows software. Then you can unplug the keyboard, plug it into anything else that accepts a USB keyboard, and all of those settings and macros will be retained inside the keyboard's memory. So it's very portable. You can only configure it on Windows, but you can, of course, bring it over to a different computer, even a Linux or Mac machine, and still retain all your macros and everything, because everything is inside the guts of the keyboard there. Another neat little feature I thought was cool is that they have a button here to lock the Windows key. So if you always hit the Windows key by accident, you can turn this lock on and it'll prevent that key from being pushed until you unlock it. That was kind of a neat thing there. Full multimedia keys there, a backlight setting here to adjust the brightness of the backlight. And the keys themselves are actually very easy to take off. You can just pull them off here. They really feel very rugged. So if you want to clean out the keyboard or something, it's very easy to do that. Just pop the keys off, pop them back in. There's really nothing that's going to break in doing that. So they're very rugged, even down to just being able to clean the keys and pull them off when you want to do that. So very open design here, kind of open air, easy to clean, and the keys are very forgiving when you pull them off. So now I want to show you how the software works. We're going to look at some macros as well as some of the backlighting features too. Let's have a look. So here is the software control panel. This only runs on Windows, so if you want to configure the keyboard, you're going to need a Windows computer to plug this into. After it's configured, it can run on any platform, but it can only be configured on Windows. And what you can do here is assign macros to your macro keys in this first level tab here. You can also manage profiles and manage the backlight also, and I'll show you how all of these things work in just a second. Now before we get into programming a macro, I do want to bring your attention back to these 3 keys at the top of the keyboard because these are your macro setting keys, and these keys define what these 6 keys do. So right now we're in macro position number 1, and you'll see here that we have macros currently assigned to G1 and G2 on our keyboard. G3 is currently blank. If I go to M2, and I can push that on the software or on the keyboard here, you'll notice that everything is blank, and that's because we haven't yet defined how the macro keys work in memory position number 2. So again, you can have 6 different macros on each of these settings for a total of 18 per profile, and I'll show you what the profiles do in a second. One thing I do suggest checking out is the delay options before you record a macro. So by default, it actually sticks in a 50 millisecond delay in between each key press. So if that's too long for you, you can change the default delay to something lower. We're going to run with 5, or you can disable this completely and not have it insert any delay at all. And what that delay is used for is if you're executing a macro in a game or a program, it might take a second for whatever you want to have happen to happen. So you may want to adjust that delay to get the timing just right. So play with it a little bit. That's one of those things that's going to depend largely on what your individual need might be. So what I'm going to do now is assign something to position number 1 here. So I'm going to type the macro record key here, and now I'm going to push the G1 key, and I'm just going to go and type my name out here, and you can see that it is inserting all those keys into the macro. And now that I'm done, I'm going to push that macro record key again, and we've got everything I just did here laid out on our screen. And you'll notice that each key is showing up twice, because what's happening is that it's recording both my key press as well as my lifting of the key. You can actually define how long the key stays pushed down for too, if you really want to get intricate about this. So there's always a need to do all this kind of crazy intricate stuff depending on what your particular needs are, but that's what you can do. I can even go in and change what this key is, so I can edit this and change it to a different letter if I wanted to, and you can really get down into every single action that this macro takes in the course of your programming. You also have some advanced options where you can insert some basic commands like copy, paste, select all, so you can really do a lot of stuff on here and really get this thing working the way you want. You can even export your individual key settings also if you want to have the ability to bring them into a different macro bank or share them with a friend or something like that. So now that we have G1 programmed here, we're going to go back to my dual display here. I'm going to push G1 and it'll just spit out my name as you just saw there. But you also have a few different playback options to set as well. So for example, we have it right now. If I just push the key, it'll spit my name out once and that's it. Even if I hold the key down, it just does it once. It doesn't do it multiple times. If we go back over here and we say the play plus N, and we define N as maybe 5, if I go ahead and back to our notepad here and hit the key, we'll now get 5 iterations of my name coming off of there. If I do want the ability to execute the macro for as long as I push the key down, I can push in this setting here, and as long as I hold the key down, it'll keep spitting my name out. So that is a little helpful thing there. You can even set a delay in between that. I have another option here to keep playing it back until I push the key again. So you do have another option. Hopefully it stops. There it goes. It has to execute fully before it stops. So you do have the option to have it run in perpetuity until you push the key again. So a lot of neat options for how that works. What you also have too is a profile setting. So right now everything is being loaded into profile 1. And so what you can do actually is set up profiles that define everything about the keyboard, including the backlight and the macros, save them to a file, share them with friends, and then create a whole new one. So if you have a game that has a lot of requirements that you really want to get every macro bank established for, you can program everything into a profile, save that profile, and then load it back in later on in the year or something after you've already changed some things. You can basically establish an entire complete setting tree of things for this keyboard in each profile and load those in each time, so you don't have to continually reprogram everything if you want to do something different in a different application. So those are very easy to do. And then if you want to download the settings to the keyboard, you click here to go save to keyboard, and that will dump that profile into the keyboard's memory. So when you do switch over to a Mac or something, you can get yourself working the same way on a different platform. So now what we're going to do is turn the lights off and show you how this backlight works. Now the backlight on this keyboard is not as advanced as it might be on some of their more expensive keyboards. The entire keyboard here is set as a whole. You cannot set individual key values for the backlight like you can on their more expensive keyboards. You have some preset colors on here that you can click on to get a color dialed up right away, and then you can go through and adjust them with the slider here to get different degrees of color. You can also pick a color off their color wheel here to get something more specific. And just like the macro settings, each of these M keys will do something different. So if I switch over to M2, we're going to go into a color cycling mode that I had configured on this keyboard. We can also go to M3, which has a totally different color setup than some of the other ones do. So I can maybe set that one to pink. We'll go back to position 1 here, and you can see we're now green. And those are the basic settings that you can do on here. There's some adjustment of brightness also. You can choose between a true color setting and a setting for maximum brightness. And I did find, though, that the backlight is not as bright in a well-lit room as their other keyboards are. They're more expensive gaming keyboards. So if backlight is very important to you, you probably want to invest in one of the more expensive keyboards, because this one is not as intense as those are. It varies by color, but for the most part, this is definitely a lot dimmer of a backlight than their other keyboards are. But if you're in a dark room, you should be able to see it okay, but the backlight on the more expensive keyboards is better. So that is the K40 from Corsair, their budget line gaming keyboard. Very well built, relatively lightweight as compared to their more expensive keyboards. Some great macro capabilities, and I really do like how many different things you can program those macros to do, and the convenience of being able to save them into profiles so you can come back to those settings later, or duplicate them and adjust them for other games or applications as well. A lot of configuration that you can do, and it's relatively simple to do it. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by the generosity of my Patreon supporters. If you find the channel helpful, you too can contribute for as little as $1 a month. Visit Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more.